All right, my English teacher friends near and far. So for this workshop video, I have a concentrated lesson that gamifies semicolon and comma instruction. So I've been on the circuit for 21 years. I started teaching, and each year I read a lot of AP papers. I'm in New York State, so I grade the Regents exam, which is our junior year exam, graduation requirement. And year after year after year, I say to myself, man, could these kids learn the difference between a comma and a semicolon? And I keep in touch with a lot of AP readers in particular, and they say it uniformly. Kids don't know, even when they take AP language and AP lit, the difference between a semicolon and a comma. And oftentimes when students write, they completely go bananas with comma splices. So for this particular workshop, I've gamified semicolon and comma instruction using a press your luck PowerPoint game that has stellar graphics. So I found this free online, and you can find it too right here. So this is the website where you can find it. It's not a Teachers Pay Teachers. It's totally free. For copyright reasons, I can't send it to you. You got to get it yourself. But I've created the mentor sentences that you'll need in order to run this. So in terms of splitting, in terms of gamifying it and making the rules and splitting up your classes, I say this to teachers, make up your own rules, have fun with it. Demographics are demographics and class sizes are class sizes, right? So for larger classes, I tend to have teams of groupings of 4. Smaller classes, we can go mano a mano. It really depends on the class size and whether or not it's an on-level class, a Regents class, an AP class, etc. So I'm not going to get into the minutia of how to gamify it and the rules and the strategies and all that stuff. You can figure that out on your own and kind of put your head around what I'm going to share next. So all of the rules that my students learn come from this text, Write It Right with Strunk and White, Celebrating the Elements of Style. It's a free book. You can get it online. It's public domain. And I just keep this in Google Classroom from day one. And I do a lot of exercises with my students on grammar, punctuation, syntax, voice, rhythm, and flow. And I call it the Nuance Academy. I run it all academic year long. So for those that are familiar with my work, you know that I do the Word Study Academy to help address the vocabulary void. And then in terms of the grammar, the punctuation, the syntax, the voice, the rhythm, the flow, the pizzazz, the flair, the spunk, in terms of their writing, I really rely on Strunk and White's delineation of things in Write It Right. It's a great companion piece. So I go over this a lot in my Teach It Right 5-week mastermind, my self-paced course. And then with National Writing Project, I do little one-off webinars. So if you're interested, go to www.nwp.org and you can get all sorts of information about the irons I have in the fire. So here's what I've done. All right, in terms of gamifying it, I have a lot of mentor sentences that pretty much spell out for students the difference between a comma and a semicolon. Like, when do you use a comma? When do you use a semicolon? So I give them mentor sentences like this that are devoid of the syntactical feature. So Socrates, try on this toga. It seems to be your size. Most kids would put a comma there, as we know. So they got to figure it out. Do I put a comma or a semicolon? But here's the thing. When we gamify and go over these sentences, I want to know why. I want the team to tell me specifically, why are you using a semicolon there? So it really comes down to students knowing what a subject and a verb is and the difference between dependent and independent clauses. And Strunk and White do a nice job of explaining those things. So I have a ton of sentences like this. To some extent, hard work is only one side of the equation. Talent is the other. So it comes down to other lessons I've done that you might be familiar with, where in terms of teaching students how to punctuate, I do this thing called exercise the pause, where they have to breathe the sentence. And when the voice naturally pauses, you know that you have to do something. So it's a comma, a semicolon, colon, dash, period, right? To some extent, it pauses there. Hard work is only one side of the equation. You pause there. Talent is the other. So comma, semicolon, right? So ultimately, kids get really good at this. I love the element of collaboration and competition. The PowerPoint keeps score on its own. And basically, if a team or a kid gets it wrong, it defers to the next team, just like the real game show. So some people dream of being something, others stay awake and are. So I got a whole bunch of these sentences where they need to use commas, they need to use semicolons. So I think I have 20 sentences that look just like this, right? Where they have to add the missing syntactical features. But then to switch it up, I have sentences that look like this. I think I have 10 of these. It says complete each of the following sentences with a logically expressed independent clause. So they need to know what an independent clause is. And that's kind of the nitty-gritty essence of a nuance academy, is that students need to know the parts of speech and the rules in order to punctuate correctly, and then that translates over into their voice, their rhythm, the flow. Going back to rule number 18 by Strunk and White, in which they assert that there's 12 different ways to construct or cobble together a single sentence. So oftentimes students overuse the independent clause or the short, simple declarative. Once they learn this stuff, they can begin to wield some complex sentences and vary their syntax, which is really good when they can do that. So blank, 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 semicolon, the kid pouted in timeout. So put an independent clause in front of that. So as a team, they can come up with that, and it really isolates the difference between a dependent and independent clause. The dog's tail was happily wagging. Semicolon, blank, 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 blank. So I got 10 of these as well. So really solidify for students how to use the semicolon, when to use the semicolon, when to use commas. So it's a fun, gamified version of learning dry, yeastless grammar, punctuation, syntax. So if you like what you see, or if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. My email is teachingwritingcoach@gmail.com. Again, this is just one aspect of my Nuance Academy. I do a lot of gamification and edutainment exercises for my Word Study Academy and my Nuance Academy. And if you want to learn more about the courses that I offer at the National Writing Project or on my own, you can visit www.teachinghowtowrite.com. So I got a lot going on with the National Writing Project. And then Tim Freitas of Garden of English fame and Brandon Abden of Perfection Learning fame. The three of us are doing the national the NCTE conference this coming fall in Anaheim. So you look for us there. So that's it for now. Happy teaching, happy writing.